What if everything you see is a lie? What if the people around you aren't even human? A drifter finds mysterious sunglasses that reveal a terrifying truth. Aliens walk among us, controlling our minds through hidden messages. And once you see them, there's no going back. George Nada arrives in Los Angeles with nothing but a backpack. He's been drifting from town to town searching for work. At the employment office, he explains he came from Colorado, where 40 banks collapsed, leaving everyone jobless. The staff tells him there's nothing available. Wandering the streets, George passes a street preacher, warning that dark forces are manipulating the world through those in power. George listens bravely but moves on. He notices a man staring blankly at a TV, completely hypnotized by commercials. George finds a homeless shelter and rests for the night. The next morning, George gets work at a construction site. The foreman agrees on daily wages, but payment won't come for days. A worker named Frank notices George's situation and offers to show him a camp with food and shelter. George follows him. Frank brings him to a community where people help each other. A man named Gilbert gives George tasks around the camp. During a meal, Frank shares his story. He moved from Detroit, leaving his family behind. Frank is angry at wealthy elites who shut down factories, throwing workers into poverty. He warns George that everyone here is competing for survival. George remains hopeful, believing hard work will rebuild his life. That evening, residents watch TV. A commercial plays until the signal cuts out. A nervous man appears on screen, delivering a strange warning. He claims their world is an illusion created by beings transmitting signals that dull people's minds and keep them obedient. The audience complains about headaches and changes the channel. George notices a blind preacher nearby, repeating every word from the broadcast. Gilbert rushes over and pulls the preacher to a nearby church. George senses something's going on. The next morning, George asks Gilbert about the church. Gilbert says they feed the homeless there. The strange broadcast interrupts TV again, causing headaches. Gilbert hurries to the church. This time, George quietly follows. Inside, he hears choir music, but it's just a tape recorder. Behind a wall, a secret group, including Gilbert, is hacking the broadcast system, trying to spread their message. George accidentally finds a hidden vault filled with boxes. As he turns to leave, the blind preacher touches his face and speaks about a coming revolution. Unsettled, George runs out. A helicopter hovers above the church. George borrows binoculars and watches Gilbert and others loading boxes into a car. Frank approaches and warns George not to dig into trouble. That evening, police surround the camp with bulldozers. Without warning, they tear down tents and shelters. People scatter in panic. Officers brutally beat the preacher and the man from the broadcasts, leaving them dead. George rescues a terrified teenager, and they hide in the church with other survivors. When morning comes, the camp is completely destroyed. George sneaks back to check the vault. He finds one box left behind. Inside are sunglasses. Confused, he takes one pair. As he walks through the city, George puts the glasses on. Everything turns black and white. Billboards reveal hidden commands: obey, consume, marry, and reproduce. Magazine covers display blunt orders instead of pictures. Even more shocking, some people no longer look human. Their faces are grotesque, skull-like creatures. George keeps removing and putting the glasses back on to confirm it's real. He notices messages on money. This is your God. Traffic lights have transmitters broadcasting sleep. George realizes many humans are unaware, casually interacting with these disguised aliens who hold all the power. Inside a supermarket, he sees a politician on TV. Through the glasses, the man's real alien face is visible. Overwhelmed, George laughs and insults an alien woman. She alerts others through her watch. Now targeted, George runs. 2 fake police officers catch him and demand to know where he got the glasses. They try recruiting him with promises of wealth. George refuses, overpowers them, steals their weapons, and eliminates them. George flees into a bank where half the customers are aliens. He opens fire on them. One alien sends a distress call and vanishes. George runs, spots a drone chasing him and knocks it down. He ducks into a parking garage and encounters a woman named Holly. After confirming she's human, he forces her to drive him home. At Holly's apartment, George collapses and tries explaining that dangerous beings are manipulating the world. He urges her to try the glasses, but Holly refuses. When George relaxes, Holly smashes a bottle over his head and shoves him out the window. George survives but loses his glasses. The next day, George asks Frank for help, but Frank is terrified. George tries explaining he attacked aliens, not humans. Frank tells him to leave. George finds the trash bin empty, but climbs into a garbage truck and recovers a few pairs of glasses. Frank shows up and hands George cash, saying it's all he can offer. George desperately pleads with Frank to put the glasses on. Frank refuses. Frustrated, he punches Frank. A brutal fight erupts. Eventually, George forces the glasses onto Frank's face. What Frank sees shocks him. He realizes George was right. They rent a motel room to regroup. George shares his childhood of poverty and abuse. Years of oppression created the perfect environment for aliens to thrive. The next morning, Gilbert finds them, also wearing glasses. He invites them to a secret meeting. They arrive and meet others who've seen the truth. They're given contact lenses that work better. Gilbert explains the aliens invaded Earth for business, recruiting humans with wealth and power. Earth is a temporary resource mine. Natural disasters and economic collapse are engineered to serve their plans. Gilbert says their priority is finding the mind control signal's origin and shutting it down. Holly appears, apologizing to George. Before they can talk, gunfire erupts. Police raid the meeting. Most don't survive, but George and Frank escape. While fiddling with an alien watch, Frank accidentally opens a portal. With enemies closing in, they jump through. They emerge in an underground alien base. Moving cautiously, they hear voices reporting the resistance has been eliminated. George and Frank follow voices to a gathering where wealthy humans celebrate Earth's takeover. A man from the old camp, now working with aliens, approaches them. Thinking they've joined, he shows them around. He brings them to a terminal where disguised aliens board shuttles to other planets. Then, he leads them to a TV studio where satellite signals keep the population brainwashed. When guards demand credentials, George and Frank attack. They ask where the signal comes from. The roof, the man says. He pleads them to stop, offering comfort if they join. They refuse, and he teleports away. George and Frank fight through the studio. They find Holly alive. Together, they reach the roof. Without warning, Holly shoots Frank dead. George steps onto the rooftop and finds the satellite dish. As he prepares to destroy it, Holly raises her gun. A helicopter warns they'll open fire. George spins and shoots Holly, then destroys the satellite dish. The helicopter fires, riddling him with bullets. As George dies, he gives them a defiant gesture. The signal is gone. Across the world, people see the truth. Disguises fall away. Aliens hiding in TV, in offices, and in relationships are exposed. The illusion is shattered, thanks to one man who refused to sleep through the lies.